Now, business owners are calling for workable solutions to save the Cedi depreciation and inflation that are currently killing their profit. Their call comes ahead of the 2023 budget presentation, which is to be delivered by Finance Minister in less than 24 hours. Joy News has been capturing some of the expectations and projections ahead of tomorrow's presentation in the following News Desk report.
The 2023 budget has been characterized with a lot of controversies, from majority MPs in the House demanding the sack of Finance Minister, or they will boycott its reading, to minority MPs threatening to boycott the entire process. The ordinary Ghanaian has expectation with respect to the 2023 budget. Business owners are calling for solutions to the challenges of the economy.
Phones from China and the accessories from China, and I think the dollar is worrying us a lot in doing our business. And then the government has to see to it so that they can reduce the dollar rate, or they can push the dollar into the country so we can all work peacefully and then the business can flow. Because now business are not flowing, everything has been paused. So I think the finance minister must work on this quickly, quick as possible.
It's all about the dollar rate. At least if the government can do something about the rate, because if it keeps on going up, it affects business as well. It makes prices shoot. But should it go down, it also helps us to at least lower our prices for people to buy. Especially since it went up, things have been really difficult when it comes to the market side. Because we need to adjust our prices as well. Imagine buying a laptop somewhere around June for 5,000, and now you need to buy it around 9,000 to 10,000. You see the difference. It's all down to the dollar rate itself. Because at that time, dollar rate was somewhere around 7 to 8, not that much. And it's doubling up really affects our business as well. So if government can do something about the dollar rate itself, we will be very, very happy about it, because it will push our business as well and help those who need laptop to buy.
At the market, traders are lamenting the high cost of transportation. Many have had to inflate their prices to cover the cost, as well as make profit. They are hoping this budget will cut out taxes on petroleum products so the cost of transportation will reduce.
How? No, the match and so. Yanto sikeni ho. Sise ni epeso ye ne se petrol no nteso. Ni nyina fi petrol na aba nti na nyama no bo ayedin. Ote petrol no so na baby omodi fi baba no. One so ombete so, me yanso yate so.
We 150 mpokita obenya bi sesi 5.5. Boto kese ni nyina woto no 12 million. Na nse ana jama aye yi kakra. Ndi wo monhwa ma ye na yanso abiadifo no ntumi nto na yantunya bi. Yaton ye de ahwe mba na esi ade anya kra.
Minku ade a ka me pese loli fe na wo so hwe mai. Oye se loli fe ni de ekọ no e ha adwene. We just say you may be a oba, would draw back up a lolly film content cities, 12 cities. Which means you only almost by 6 million, 7 dear, yeah, bre.
Director of the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research, Professor Peter Kote wants government to cut down on net expenses for the 2023 fiscal year.
So the budget statement would execute what is in our medium-term strategy. So 1 year, 2023 budget alone will not address all our problems. It will to some extent, but we need a medium to long-term plan of strategy. In this 2023 budget, I would expect to see what are the measures we are putting in place to address our fiscal challenges. Revenue mobilization has been very, very slow. We saw the poor performance of e-levy, our anchor, prior to going to the IMF. We've seen that other tax handles are not giving the needed revenue. So I would want to see new and innovative measures to be introduced in the 2023 budget that will shore up our revenue mobilization strategy. We've seen GRE doing its best, but I think we need to go a step further.
On her part, economist lecturer at the University of Ghana, Dr. Presla Chumesi Bafo said government will be shooting itself in the foot if it announces new capital-intensive projects.
I will not be surprised to see that they reinstall road tolls because, first of all, the removal was quite something that was surprising. The president hinted about property taxes, the expenditure as well, because given that we do not have, for every cedi that is efficiently spent, it means that it will be good value to the people of Ghana rather than spending on other things that are not necessarily important. So at this point, it is more about bread and butter issues for government, keeping essential expenditure and taking out all the others that are not necessary. So I will be very surprised if I should see a rollout of big capital expenditure items in this 2023 budget, because that is not something that would be feasible.
So what will the 2023 budget present? Will it answer the prayers of the ordinary Ghanaian? Only time will reveal.
Now, joining us on Zoom for more on what Ghanaians must expect of this budget is an economist, Dr. Patrick Esuming. Doc, grateful that you could join us. What should we expect of this year's budget?
Good morning and good morning to viewers. So I think the 2023 budget takes on additional significance because of the current circumstances that we are having as a country. So we are in discussion with the IMF to try and get a bailout, and times are very tough and things are not going on well at all. So that means that the 2023 budget really has to be one that comes up with credible proposals for fixing the problems of our economy. Admittedly, one budget is not enough to fix all our problems, but at the very minimum, it should signal a policy direction that will tell us that we are going to fix the main problems of our economy. So, I mean, against that background, I think what I would expect to see is, a sort of an attempt or the beginning of a process to restructure the real side of the economy. So, in the current discussions, it's become apparent that the structure of the economy we have is a big contributor to the difficulties that we are having. And both the current president and the immediate past president have spoken about how we need to restructure the economy. So I hope that the 2023 budget will give us a clear sense of direction in terms of what we are going to do to restructure the economy in that sense. So when you play your clip, you've seen Ghanaians asking for the currency depreciation to be halted and the fuel prices to also be reduced. But you know that the recent rise in fuel prices is primarily because of the depreciation of the currency. And the depreciation of the currency is not something that we are going to solve overnight, because some aspects can be dealt with in terms of dealing with the institutional things that makes it easy for people to buy dollars anyway and allow people to quote in dollars and sell in dollars. So that one we can fix, but we have to understand that over the long term, we have to generate more export revenue than we are importing. And that requires a little bit more painstaking policy and measures to address.
Okay.
Then the big elephant, obviously, is that we are going to have to deal with the deficit and the debt. And so you definitely expect that there will be some revenue measures.
Prof, okay, so I mean, a lot more people are also looking forward to fuel reduction, but you've said that it will be quite difficult for us to look at it. So what specific things are you expecting to hear from the finance minister, which will give you, an economist, the confidence that we are probably back on track, or this budget could get us back on track?
So, I mean, broadly, there are revenue measures and then also the expenditure side. So in terms of the expenditure, well, I think, the government really has to signal that, we are going to see more efficiency in the way we spend public funds. So there's the issue about the size of the government itself that, we don't need to belabor it. It's been widely said. So some action in that direction will be helpful. But I also think that we need to think about the perks we give to public officials. You know, if we are facing very difficult times as we are facing, I think it's good for the government to signal that it is also, you know, tightening its belt. And one of the surest ways to announce that from now on, what we give to public sector or what we give to government employees, the ministers and the other appointees, by way of fuel coupons and all the other things that they get, we are going to cut them. Admittedly, that is not enough to put a significant dent in our debt situation, but at least it signals that these are difficult times. The government itself is doing something, is giving up something, and then it's easier for the government to ask for Ghanaians to do something. So that is on the expenditure side, and also try not to grow the expenditure, you know, on year-to-year basis as much as we've seen in the last few years. On the revenue side, so I think it would be a travesty really if we saw some more indirect taxes. But as others have said, I would like to see the government bringing back the road tolls. You know all the troubles and all the traffic that the road tolls were causing. But the answer was not to say I'm going to scrap the road tolls, because we know that there are leakages in the amount of the road tolls that were collected, and that's because of how it was collected. Now we have more technology to be able to ensure that we collect a lot more of the tolls, and then we have to question whether the rates also have to go up. So that is something that will be good to see, the road tolls element. Then we might also want to adjust our tax system to ensure that we collect a lot more from the rich. You know, these are difficult times. And then we know the ordinary Ghanaians who spend a higher fraction of their incomes on food are really feeling the pinch. But at the same time, we know there are some who are relatively better off and could contribute a lot more. So I would like to see measures to ensure that we are collecting more from the richer folks. And in the last year, this year we've passed the exemptions bill. And we've passed there's been some activity around the property taxes. I think that is another area where the government should really consider seriously in terms of raising more revenue.
Okay. But finally, before I let you go, we've not had any program with the IMF. How do you expect the negotiations with the IMF to influence the sort of budget that government will bring going into 2023?
Yeah, you expect that, you know, even though the negotiations have not been concluded, you would expect that the sort of things that are being discussed should feature prominently in the budget that is presented tomorrow. Because, you know, the budget is going to be implemented in an era where we will be an IMF program. So whatever is being discussed really should play a big role. It would have been great if the negotiation had been concluded before the budget was started, but the timelines haven't allowed that.
Okay.
So I think it will be important for the government to be truthful and be honest about where the negotiations are, and but at the same time not to make any promises that it ultimately cannot fulfill because it is in the IMF program. So I think in this area it would have been good that the discussions and negotiations with public sector workers are concluded, so that you don't present a budget and then there's a standoff with public sector workers, and then the government feels necessary to give more in terms of the expenditures over the course of the budget year. So we really have to have a budget and set targets that are achievable and realistic.
Okay.
So all the things that we can do before we announce the target, we should do them before we set the target.
Okay. All right. And that's we have less than 24 hours to do that. Wouldn't it be difficult? Something difficult to do then?
Yeah, I think it's unclear why we've delayed or we've allowed the discussion to start pretty late in the day, and it also appears that government's own posturing hasn't helped with the negotiation. I think everybody knows that we are in difficult times. If you observe what has happened on the labor front, it appears that sometimes the government has been too reactionary instead of being proactive and engaging organized labor and being truthful in the discussions. That appears that they haven't done that. So you see why, even though they are in a hurry to try and get something done, it's going to be some difficulty. But I do hope that there's a breakthrough today and something will be agreed before we finalize the budget.
Okay, all right. Grateful to you. Dr. Patrick Assuming is an economist with the University of Ghana. Now,